Welcome to In the Funnel. My name is Mark Cox. In the Funnel is a group of sales coaches and consultants that help B2B sales teams dramatically improve revenue. Clients come to us when revenue growth is stagnated, or their sales team is not meeting expectations, or they need to recalibrate their sales and go-to-market plan for the upcoming year. Our clients have enjoyed tremendous success working within the funnel, and please hear it straight from them by listening to the testimonial section of this website. What they'll tell you is there's two things that make us unique and different in our space. Number one, we have a process and a methodology. First, for understanding your current state, and then second, for building your sales and go-to-market plan for the upcoming year. The second thing that makes us unique and different is that everybody within the funnel has run a material sales organization in their recent past. We're all practitioners. We don't have any theorists or teachers, and what that means is we can get in front of your sales team and run the next sales meeting, or join them on their next sales call to close your next large prospect. All of us have a passion for professional, disciplined, process-driven sales, and we'd be delighted to talk to you if you're looking to grow revenue for your company. Please feel free to reach out to us through this website at info@inthefunnel.com or by telephone. Thanks for taking the time to watch this.
So how do I stay in touch with people in ways that are relevant to what they care about? That's the key, continuing to provide value. And then my follow-up messages in my world, it's not going to be, "Hi, Mark, have you decided to hire your speaker this year?" It might be, but it might be, "Hey, Mark, this is Sam Richter. Hope all is going well. Say, I looked at your website. I saw you put up your event program. It looks like you're going to be down at the Gaylord in Nashville. Love the hotel. You're going to have an amazing time. Looks like your theme this year is intelligence. I had to reach out because that's my area of expertise. Was wondering if we could get 60 seconds on the phone. We can see if I'd be a good fit. And if I'm not, I know some of the best speakers on the planet. I'd be happy to give you some referrals." Again, super short, relevant to what they care about.
You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to make them interested in you. Spectacular quote and message from Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And of course, this isn't new, but it's still just as relevant today as it was 100 years ago. And it's really relevant for today's conversation with Sam Richter, because Sam Richter is an internationally recognized expert on digital transformation. He's actually considered the father of modern day sales intelligence. Amazing credentials as well. He's a top 50 sales keynote speaker. And in 2007, he wrote the book, Take the Cold Out of Cold Calling. He was really getting into this early. And that book became the best sales book of that year. So fantastic credentials with Sam. Today, by the way, Sam is also the founder of IntelNgin, which is a technology that enables us to do this for our buyers faster. Takes that research from minutes to seconds. But in today's conversation, we talk about a number of really important things today and just have a great conversation with Sam. He speaks to the importance of relevance. So moving away from relationship where you know about the buyer and the buyer knows about you, and relevance is really more focused on you knowing about that buyer and specifically their goals, their fears, and what they care about. He gives a couple of great examples in the podcast of how to properly reach out and use a couple of things you'll be able to take away today and actually immediately apply. We have an interesting conversation about, the fact this isn't new today. 20, 30 years ago, great salespeople did this. It was much more difficult. And he references his father-in-law who sold corrugated boxes, but 20 years after he stopped doing it, he still had buyers who were really interested in him because of the connections that he made by, again, understanding their goals, their fears, what they care about, making it about the buyer. course, today it's so much easier with digital information. And of course, Sam's an expert on that. A couple of other fun things from today's conversations. We're going to talk about that importance of mindset. And one of the things that's quite interesting is Sam is a self-admitted introvert, but he shares the fact that by doing research on people he's selling to or working with, it makes him feel like he has the confidence to actually engage them and be excited about that conversation, even though as an introvert, his tendency is not to get excited about meeting new people. We talk about these things in today's podcast and lots more. It's a great conversation. And Sam's a terrific guy, just a wonderful individual to speak with. You'll enjoy today's chat. And when you do, please like and subscribe to the Selling Well podcast. Also, tell your friends. Thanks so much, team. And here's Sam Richter. Hey, Sam, welcome to the show. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, I'm so honored to be on your show. I mean, I'm such a fan of all the work you've done, and what an impressive resume you have. And it's just an honor to be with you and all of your listeners today. So thank you.
Well, Sam, first of all, thank you. That's awfully kind of you to say. And knowing who you are and what you do, I feel even better because I know you've actually done research on my background, given what you do. And so the reason I know that is because about 10 years ago, team, I picked up a great book when we started ramping things up within the funnel, and it was called Take the Cold Out of Cold Calling, Web Search Secrets. And it was amazing to me at the time how effective this book was. It was so beautifully put together as a real guide and a tool. And I'll tell you, Sam, it's amazing to me even today how necessary it is, because there's still a good portion of the sales profession that are going into sales calls blind and not adding the value that they could be providing by doing proper research prior to those meetings. Tell me, from your point of view, how relevant is this content given the groups that you speak to today?
Well, that's a wonderful question. And actually, when I wrote the first edition of the book back in 2007, I figured everything I talk about in terms of being relevant would have a shelf life of maybe 5 to 7 years, because eventually, Google would implant something in our brain and we would just know everything about everybody. So we wouldn't need this. What I found actually, and I'd love your opinion on this as well, there's been a real convergence of marketing and sales. So what do I mean? Going back 15, I started out my career as I was an advertising writer and a creative director. So I really understand marketing. And there used to be really a silo. So marketing people were in their silos. We were the guys that created, funny ads, and the teams that did, won awards, and salespeople were the people that picked up the phone and got in the calls and closed deals. And they didn't really talk to each other. They didn't even like each other.
It's true.
And then what's happened over the years is I think there's been a real convergence, or sometimes I like to say confusion, between marketing and sales. So what do I mean? So many people I meet with, and I'm sure it's the same on your end, will say, well, all I need is a list. Just give me a list. And there's nothing wrong with a list, but a list is a group of suspects. What do I mean? Let's say that you sell to dentists in Toronto. Well, I can get you a list of every dentist in Toronto. That's fine. There's probably 10,000 of them, let's say. I don't know. And the best you'll ever be able to do in terms of personalizing your message, whether that's via social media, via email, via telephone, is hi, Joe, hi, Sally, hi, Mark. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. As you know, we need a huge 5,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1 million suspects in the top of our funnel. But that's not sales. That's marketing. Sales prospects is when you know something about that other person. Right. And that they need you today. So for example, let's say that you sell network services to dental offices. I can give you a list of 10,000 dentists in Toronto. And if you call every one of them, mathematically, someone will need you. But what if I said, well, here are the 15 people this month who have moved offices. Here's the 7 who are expanding. Those are people, we call those trigger events. What's going on in their world where they might need you? It's a long-winded answer of saying what Intel does is really bridge the gap between suspects and prospects.
Great.
And so it's probably more relevant today. And one of the big reasons why is our marketplace today. If I've got a technology company in Toronto, well, my competition is global, oftentimes at a much lower price. So I better learn how to sell value based on what the other person cares about. So I talk a lot about relevance, and relevance, there's really three parts. It's what are your prospects' goals? What are their fears? And what are their care abouts? And then we can use the internet to answer a lot of those questions before we walk in the room.
Well, we'll talk about how we do that, but just on the what we need to do, this is really part of almost a common sense revolution that I see taking place right now in sales, in professional B2B sales. And we love technology, Sam, just like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what's taken place over the last 10 to 20 years is as the sales tech stack increased, there's now 6,000 different sales tech stacks or technologies that can help you with B2B selling.
Sure.
We thought we would automate that front end process that you referenced, the 10,000 dentists, and we'll hit them with an email sequence that's blind, and we'll repeatedly do it. And as you say, a certain percentage will flow to the bottom.
Yeah.
And for a period of time, that actually might have worked.
Sure.
But the problem is when we're automating it, so are every other client, the company out there, and any phrasing or approaches that may have worked to get attention and awareness no longer work. And concurrent to that, we now got to the point where before COVID, we're passing 300 billion emails back and forth every day.
Wow. Yeah.
45% of which are spam.
Mm-hmm.
So this spray and pray doesn't work, and it's inefficient. It also sort of taints the actual channel. So email is no longer a particularly effective channel. It's surprising now how effective telephone is because nobody uses it.
Exactly. And what's funny, Mark, is I actually think email has become more of a branding tool if used correctly. What do I mean is,
tell me about that.
Well, I think that a lot of people, like you say, oftentimes I get these emails, I'm sure you do too. And instead of reading the content of the email, I can look at the first 2 or 3 lines and I'm trying to figure out which person's script they're actually following.
Right.
Because like you said, everybody's doing the same magic script. But I think if you provide value in your email, so even with those marketing suspects, it could be, here's a research report you might be interested in, here's a free webinar. That helps with the brand. So then when someone does have an event, a trigger event that's going on in their world, they maybe they learn about you, and then something triggers in the back of their mind. I've heard of that person before. I don't know where, but I've heard of that person before. Yeah. So in a weird way, it's possible that email marketing, email selling, which really was thought of as more of a direct sales technique, is maybe starting to become more of a marketing technique. And I would argue, maybe not so. When we think of email marketing, we think of like HTML emails and pretty emails and things like that. I think just even very simple emails. Hey, Mark, here's a research report that I thought you might be interested. Hope all is well. Please let me know if you have any questions. That could actually be effective today with those marketing suspects. Marketing or sales prospects, we want to go deeper based on something we know that they care about.
Love the idea of, and it's nothing new, but it's so important, is just provide value.
Yeah.
And some understanding that you understand the organization or the environment or the industry that you're selling or marketing into.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I love that idea of it makes a lot of sense to me, Sam, that if, hey, I get a couple of emails from somebody where they provide relevant content or some value, they are building an impression in my mind of them in terms of the way they've done it. So it doesn't mean I'm automatically going to pick up the phone and call them, but it may well mean that when they call me, I might actually take it. Or
exactly.
So this is where your point on branding.
And I use that a lot. I use the combination of email and telephone calls a lot. I will typically start out with a phone call, which I know I'm going to get a voicemail message. And I might even say something like, hey, Mark, there's no need to return this voicemail. I know how busy you are. I'm going to be dropping you an email. I've got a research report that I thought you'd really like. No need to sign up or download it or anything. You can just click and go to it. Look for my email. Hope to obviously reach out if you have any questions. Something so short, and then following it up with a really short email. Better is even LinkedIn. I think the sales professionals have destroyed LinkedIn with, hey, I'd like to connect with you. And then the next message, it's boom, would you like to buy from me? It's so annoying. Don't do that.
I know.
70% value, 30% sales. I love to connect with people, but don't hit me with a sales message immediately. Hit me with a relevant value message.
Well, duck soup caused that for all of us.
Oh,
right?
gosh,
So, there's 4 or 5 of these, let's call them the phantoming blasters for LinkedIn that LinkedIn doesn't approve of, but that's it. They're not making a conscious decision. As soon as you accept the connection request, away it goes. And immediately you're asking to make a withdrawal without making a deposit.
Right.
There's nothing.
It's like, if I've never heard of the person, why am I going to buy from you? And it's like, it's annoying because I want to link with people. I find LinkedIn incredibly valuable because I like to learn about people and know, I follow you, Mark, and it's great. You've got amazing
Sam.
content.
Right back at you.
And I just don't hit me with the sales message immediately. Let me learn more about you.
It's so simple. And this is one of the fun things I like about where we're at today. And for those of you, by the way, listening, go back and replay that voicemail message that Sam just shared. So there's something we can apply to ourselves and our business and our industry tomorrow. First of all, beautiful, calm confidence, non-scripted, but a human voicemail.
Mm-hmm.
Calm, confident, engaging. I just left, no need to get back to me. I just left something I think might be of value to you. We're back to Robert Cialdini and the theory of reciprocity.
Sure.
It's in our DNA that when somebody starts to do some nice things for us, it's very difficult not to give something back. Doesn't mean they have to buy from you, but they might take a look. They might say thank you. Or they might say, Sam's earned the right for a short conversation a couple of weeks from now because I did get some value out of these 2 things. I wonder what else Sam knows about my industry that might be helpful to me.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, I'm a professional speaker. I do keynote speaking all over the world. And so my buying cycle can sometimes be years.
Oh,
so
wow.
How do you stay in touch with people, right? I mean, because let's say they booked Mark for 2000, they've already done their 2023 conference. They've already booked that. That's happening in February. They probably already talked to you. You're booked in 2024. I might not even be on the table till 2020. Oh, in 2025, they've had 2 males keynote speakers. They'd like to have a female keynote speaker for 2025. And 2026, they're going to be speaking about the gaps in generations. So I might not even be there till 2027. So how do I stay in touch with people in ways that are relevant to what they care about? That's the key. Continuing to provide value. And then my follow-up messages in my world, it's not going to be, hi, Mark, have you decided to hire your speaker this year? It might be, but it might be, hey, Mark, this is Sam Richter. Hope all is going well. Say, I looked at your website. I saw you put up your event program. It looks like you're going to be down at the Gaylord in Nashville. Love the hotel. You're going to have an amazing time. Looks like your theme this year is intelligence. I had to reach out because that's my area of expertise. Was wondering if we could get 60 seconds on the phone. We can see if I'd be a good fit. And if I'm not, I know some of the best speakers on the planet. I'd be happy to give you some referrals. Again, super short, relevant to what they care about.
Who's not responding to that voicemail? I mean, first of all, it was all about me. Mm-hmm. If I'm that buyer, it's all about me. And it's, I see what you're doing. You're looking for a successful event. You probably have lots on your mind. You may have some, all that person's thinking about is, how do I be successful executing this event? And by the way, now I'm chatting with somebody who's got some background and context. And by the way, if I'm not a great fit, I know lots of people who are deep in this world. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Right. So, that whole conversation, these are awful terms. We got to do better with our terms on our end, Sam, but you didn't have commission breath for any part of that conversation. Mm-hmm. And you just had, here's somebody who's deep in this space and might be able to add value. those are the folks we want to engage, buyers want to engage with.
Yeah.
And buyers have problems, they have challenges, they have issues, they have objectives. We have to, if we understand their world and what they're going through, and we can provide value, they'll always take that call. A very minor note, by the way, I'm older than you, Sam, but I remember a day when my voicemails were filled every day.
Mm-hmm.
I'd get 25 or 30 voicemails. Now my email, I'll get 250 emails a day.
Yep.
No one leaves me a voicemail. I get ghosted a lot. But you talked about building that brand. Salespeople aren't leaving voicemails because, again, there's a bit of that fear of rejection, and it seems like more of a leap and so on and so forth. But you build that brand by leaving that kind of voicemail, even a couple of times.
Yeah. And Mark, everything we're talking about is not new. It's not. I mean, I'll use my father-in-law, Ken Livingston, as an example, by the way, from Toronto.
Oh, wow.
So Ken was one of the top salespeople at American Packaging Corporation. So he sold corrugated boxes. Not a lot of differentiation between him and his competition.
Right.
Now, at Ken's funeral 23 years ago, there were so many, I'm going to say 50, 60 of Ken's customers came up to my wife and said, "Oh, we loved Ken. Ken knew about my family. Ken knew about my kid going to West Point. Ken knew about my husband having cancer. Ken knew about our vacation. Ken knew what my favorite candy was. He'd always bring it to me for the holidays." As I like to say in my program, how is it possible that at a time in history where if Ken wanted to call one of his customers, he had to find a glass booth on a corner and stick a dime in a machine? How is it possible that he knew more about his customers than I dare say most salespeople know today? And we have pretty much access to every piece of content ever written, produced, video, audio. We have access to that in our palm that we can get in 30 seconds. To me, it's a mindset, Mark. And here's where I think another piece of technology, talking about tech stack, kind of ruined things. CRM systems. All of our customers have, the people we deal with, Mark, CRM systems. And what's CRM stand for? Customer Relationship Management. All of our customers probably do a great job on the customer side. Most companies do a great job on the customer side. They know how many people are going to their website, what's their average order size, how many times they click, what's their email opt-in rate, how many times they call customer support. And marketing people and sales people and operations people and technology people are getting commissioned if they move those needles a little bit. If we can increase our click-through rate, you get a bonus, right? A lot of companies have done a great job on the management side, meaning they've used this piece of software to automate business processes. Right? Oh, we've got a great client onboarding process. When someone comes in, we just click a button and that automatically assigns the 63 things that have to happen to the right people at the company. And oh, by the way, we get bonuses if we do it well. I'll ask you, Mark, with all the companies you've ever dealt with over the years, how many people get bonuses for the R part of CRM? Relationships.
Yeah.
Nobody. Because it's the wrong word. And here's what I mean. Mark, if you're selling me HVAC equipment, right? Do I need to know about your political affiliation, your religion, your family? What's your favorite candy? I don't care about, no offense, Mark, if you're selling me HVAC equipment, I don't care about any of those things.
Right.
But I expect you to have a relationship mindset with me, meaning you better know that I have a home office where I produced I've got a fairly sophisticated video studio with lots of lights, and it gets 110 degrees in here in the summer. And I've got 2 dogs, and my kids are away from home now, so maybe I don't need to heat or air condition the lower level of our house. You have to have a relationship mindset. But a relationship, I think, is the wrong word, because a relationship implies that I know as much about you as you know about me. I think the better word is relevance. So customer relevance management, because I can give you a bonus for relevance. I can put that in your job description. How well do you know your customers? I can put that in one of your lead forms. How well do you know what's going on in their world? What What are the reasons that they might buy from us? And so I think that's another thing where everyone talks about relationships, but it's not really, it's relevance.
I think that's a great way of describing it. And the relevance says it's all about them.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's, I couldn't help but smile. And I know you've referenced it in lots of your speeches and lots of your publications, but when you said things haven't changed, this is not new.
Right.
Those of us of a certain
I was just going to say, that's the greatest sales book ever written.
Those of us of a certain maturity, I know you like this book, which is why I pulled it. How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Right.
And those of you in this podcast who followed our podcast last 60 episodes, we reference this all the time.
All the time.
And the book, you'll correct me, Sam, but I think the book's about 100 years old.
Yeah, 1920, I think.
And one of the and still makes the nonfiction bestseller list every second year. It seems to pop back up there. And it's funny, I had this exact same conversation the other day with a great guy from Harvard named Frank Cespedes. And Frank's written about 7, 8 great business books.
Yep.
And one of them's Sales Management That Works is his most recent one. But I see Frank as a little bit of a mentor, and I was in Boston, so I went and sat down with him and I said, "Hey, Frank, I'm having this real challenge with what we do it in the funnel." And he's a great listener. He said, "Tell me about it." I said, "It doesn't feel like we've, cracked the code on the newest, most important thing." I said, "Everything we're fixing, nothing's changed in the last 25 years. It's all the same problems, but they're getting worse."
Yeah.
And so he pulled it out of me that I was hoping to find this 2-sentence solution or the new tool. And he said, "Mark, the truth of it is what we're doing today is we're presenting fundamental, long-term wisdom to a new generation in a way they can hear it." But he said, people haven't changed in hundreds of years. So why would this change at all? There's a way to do this well. We're just not doing it well. That's
so correct. And it's so funny. You sit down, if you can get a good author over a beer, whether that's, you had Daniel Pink or Jill Conrad's a friend of mine, Art Subcheck, all of them.
Harvey McKay,
who's one of my mentors and dearest friends. And you sit down with them over a beer and you say, Harvey, chapter 7 of How to Win Friends and Influence People, isn't that basically a mirror of chapter 6 of How to Win Friends and Influence But it's really, and you know why that is? It's not that people are plagiarizing. It's the basics are the basics.
Yeah.
And the basics are people care about themselves. People are massively passionate about themselves. That doesn't mean that you're not a nice person, that you don't have empathy, but we're massively passionate about themselves. And so sales, I think, is an incredibly noble profession. Why? Because when done correctly, I'm not trying to convince you to buy something that you normally wouldn't have bought. Sales is really, Mark, what's going on in your world? What are your care-abouts? What are your fears? What are your goals? Do I have a solution that might be able to help you achieve your goals, eliminate your fears, or get you some of your care-abouts a little bit more effectively, efficiently, profitably than you might be able to do on your own? Hey, then we're going to do business together. And if not, maybe, hey, I've been around the block a few times. Maybe I know somebody or another company that might be able to fulfill your needs. That is that mindset again. And Mark Hunter, who's a dear friend of mine, talks about mindset a lot. And I think that's because, again, what's happened with technology is sales managers, they can, typically, what can you do? What are some of the levers we can pull to increase our revenue? Well, we can increase our price. We can increase the percentage of average order size. We can increase the number of people who respond to us. That's more of a marketing. And for salespeople, we can increase the number of calls we make. Great. Go ahead. Increase the number of calls you make. And guess what? If that's how I'm going to get my bonus, you're going to log in and see how many calls I make. What am I going to do, Mark? I'm going to make a lot of calls.
I get a lot of calls from people who know I'm never going to pick up, and they leave me voicemails. It's the craziest thing.
They're going to leave
and they do it. They're doing it to pad numbers.
Yep. And I think an analogy, my dad was a pharmacist. And I remember he worked for a small chain who was bought by a bigger chain and eventually bought by a bigger chain.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he told me once a story, not trying to denigrate your friend from Harvard, but his language was a bunch of Harvard guys who know nothing about pharmacy business came in and bought the company. And I met with them today, and they told me I need to increase the number of prescriptions I write. They showed me this spreadsheet with this model that we can increase profits 32.6% if you write this number of prescriptions. And then my dad said, look around. What do you mean? Look around. I said, who's in the store? Well, there's a little old lady there. There's an older gentleman there. There's another old lady there. Yeah. What's the theme? Well, a lot of elderly people here. Exactly. And in fact, the people who come into this pharmacy, I might be the only person they speak to for the entire week.
Oh, boy.
And guess what? Doctors are under such a rush, and a lot of these people have 12, 15, 18 prescriptions. They have the number of times where I've probably saved somebody's life because the doctor didn't know that they were on this medication that would be
right.
He said, I'm happy to write more prescriptions, but you're going to have more dead customers.
Right. Well, exactly.
And I think that's very analogous to sales. Is we always hear that saying, sales is a numbers game. I suppose that's true. But I think sales is a numbers game if you're calling on the right people with the right message at the right time.
I agree. And like anything, there are things that are a numbers game, but only if you do it well.
Mm-hmm.
Fitness is a numbers game.
Sure.
But only if when I go to the gym or when I jump on the Peloton, I actually do a challenging workout that's methodical with scientific backing, and I do it well.
Yeah.
I push my limits, or I try. Nothing's just a numbers game. I think when people just want to check a box, we're going to get into bad results, bad things happen. You talked about these metrics for improving sales performance there, which I completely agree with, Sam. The other one is, how about increase a win rate?
Yeah.
So
that's what's the percentage of people that buy? Isn't that the ultimate one anyhow?
Yeah. And the irony of this is, and which is really hard to communicate to people, by the way, this is, we've dedicated our lives over here at In the Funnel to trying to figure out, how do you actually communicate to salespeople so they understand? It's very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a one-time thing. No single event is going to really change sales performance. And unless management totally reinforces
mm-hmm.
all the concepts we're doing, it just won't stick.
Right.
But the irony of all of this is, the less I worry about me and my quota and my product in any form of discussion, the better the conversation's going to be for the person I'm speaking to.
Mm-hmm.
And the better the conversation is for them, the better outcome for me.
Absolutely. And I do want to, I think it's important to also say that what we're talking about is really, it works the majority of time for the majority of complex sales.
Yes.
There are companies I work with, and I'm sure you have as well, that have such a defined value proposition, and where it is truly a numbers game. Like the value proposition is so high, and you have such a very defined audience,
mm-hmm.
and your message is so tailored to that audience that you can call them, and within 30 seconds, they're interested and they're not interested. Fine, go on to the next person.
Mm-hmm.
There are organizations like that, of course. I think more anything, the more of the complex sale, whether that's selling commercial HVAC units to legal services to even being a financial advisor to individual consumers. That's where this is really, really important. And I think that it is important, as you think of all the work you do and in the funnel, it's at, I know you talk about it. It's at the top of the funnel, garbage in, garbage out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to have the right leads, and you've got to be relevant to what they care about at the top of the funnel and be customized.
And, it all to me leads back to what you nailed 10 years ago or back in 2008 with the first printing of Take the Cold Out of Cold Calling was the platinum rule.
Yeah. And that's not, now that I wish I could have invented that, but that was by Dr. Tony Alessandra, who's brilliant. But, the platinum golden rules, do unto others as you'd like to have it done unto yourself. And Dr. Tony says the platinum rule is do unto others as they would like it done unto themselves.
Right.
What does the other person care about? Help them get it.
And when you're speaking, again, one of the things that I wouldn't say it's a frustration, Sam. I think this is part of the challenge and the opportunity and the joy of what we do. But this to me seems shockingly simple. Our whole lives are about the other people. Now, in fairness, maybe that's a good example of why we have a challenge. It's hard to do. It's not about us. It's about our spouse. It's not about us. It's about our kids. It's not about us. It's about our friends and our neighbors or anybody we interact with. But of course, those days where we're a little tired, we're underfed, we're a little grumpy, we're a little stressed, suddenly we default to it's about me because I need some things. But what's the easiest way, or how do we coach everybody listening to this podcast today to constantly live this way in their profession? How do we help them with this kind of core platinum rule and to actually operationalize it so that it is a reflex?
It's very difficult.
It sure is.
Because the exact definition of the platinum rule, or what we've been talking about, is people are massively passionate about themselves. Yeah. So therefore, as a salesperson, I'm massively passionate about myself. And I know I need to close this deal because we've got the holidays coming up and my kids want the new Xbox and my wife would love a new kitchen. And you know what I'm saying? And it's like, I've got to close this deal. So it's very, very hard. There's no question about that. I think that to me, how I do that, Mark, and it's part of the research process. Like when I was preparing for this call, I didn't have to spend a lot of time. I mean, that's the beautiful thing. A lot of us have information out there. I call it the 3x5. Spend 3 minutes trying to find 5 pieces of information.
Great.
Or 5 minutes trying to find 3 pieces of information. Okay. I spent a little time on your website, on your LinkedIn profile, a little bit of a news search. All right. You play hockey. Boom. We connected. You live in Toronto. I'm very familiar with Toronto. I've got a lot of family members from Toronto. That didn't take me a long time to figure out. But my point in saying that is by doing my research, I automatically started to get out of what's good for me. And I got into the mindset of what do I have in common with Mark? And I'm actually an introvert by nature, which is a little weird.
You wouldn't know it.
Yeah, thank you. Being a professional speaker. And what happens is when I do some homework and I learn something about you, my introvertedness melts away.
Yes.
I'm excited to talk about you. It gives me, I like to say in my programs, when you have intel, it gives you permission to ask more challenging questions.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, it just gets me in the mindset of you. And I'll use a real silly example. In our preparation, when we were starting out our small talk, if you will, prior to starting this podcast.
Yes.
Well, you've made it very available online that you played goalie. And we talked about what it must have been like in the days before goalies had masks.
Right.
It would have been it wouldn't have been a bad question, but it would have been really weird if just like out of the blue, if I just said, "Hey, Mark, you ever lost any teeth?" That would have been weird, right?
Right.
But by doing my homework, we could lead down a path, and I gained permission to ask those challenging questions.
Yes.
Many of your listeners, I'm sure you are familiar with the Challenger sale. And
we've had Matt Dixon and Brent Adamson on this a couple times.
Yeah, I mean, they're awesome.
They're great guys.
And a lot of the sales books I've read, as I'm sure you do, always talk about the need to have information. And everyone nods their head and they go, oh, yeah, got to have information. Yep, that's very true. But very few people tell you how to get the information.
Right.
And so that's the real key. And it's not hard to do. But it's also a mindset.
Well, you were very nice to do this research prior to us meeting. By the way, it warms up the podcast immediately, and it allows for me to explain to you why my face looks this way, because I played hockey during those days. So now I don't have to be embarrassed. By the way, folks, there's a reason we don't show the video on the podcast, and it's not because of Sam. Okay.
Well, I would say I don't know if that's true. People have always said I've got a great face for radio.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, this is what a nose looks like when you break it.
Yep.
But it's so darn the 3x5 would be something that's so easy to operationalize. And I take it another way. I actually think maybe I'm partially an introvert as well. And everything you shared, Sam, really resonated with me. In my early days of selling in the early 90s, I was walking into businesses completely blind in my first days of selling photocopiers. I literally did not know what these businesses did. And because I was right out of school, I had very low business acumen. And so was almost embarrassed to try and ask. So I didn't ask, but I didn't know. I completely agree. I think doing the 3x5, 3 minutes, 5 points of interest, or 5 minutes, 3 points of interest, you feel like you can earn the right to proceed with certain questions.
Sure.
And that's where I think it's so important. And it does, you say it strips away you being an introvert. It actually adds confidence, to salespeople, so they can be a little more calm and confident, and then maybe a little bit more in the moment. And instead of having part of their brain trying to figure out what's my next question, running through the filing cabinet, we can actually have a conversation, because I've done a little bit of research and I can actually hear you and listen to you.
Yes.
And then maybe take a pause after you've finished speaking so you can finish what you're saying instead of interrupting you.
I agree. And I think you said a magic word there, and that's confidence. Because people ask me a lot, how do you use this information without people thinking you're some kind of a stalker? And my simple answer is very couple of words. I don't. What do you mean you don't? I don't always have to share that I know the information. Right. But what allows me to do is ask better questions. And it gives me confidence. I joke in one of my programs and say, what are you going to do? Walk into somebody and say, hey, I did a little research on you, and looks like you're on your third divorce and second bankruptcy. You think you'll get it right this time, right? You're not going to do that. But if I know something, and what I'm looking for is a connection. I'm looking for something in common, something of interest, something that allows me to ask a better question. I might use the example, for sometimes I'll research somebody and I'll go to their Facebook page. Or on their LinkedIn page, certainly. Facebook page sometimes. And let's see that I see that they love dogs, right? Well, I love dogs. Now, that would be a little weird, Mark, if I called you out of the blue and said, hey, Mark, Sam Richter calling from SBR Worldwide, and wow, I see that you love dogs. That would be weird. Right? But there will be a point in time in the conversation where you're going to say something like, tell me a little bit about you, Sam. Now, because I know you love dogs,
perfect. My
answer might be something like this. Well, Mark, go through the basics, got a company, yada, yada. I'm working from, now since COVID, I'm 100% working from home. My wife works from home. My daughter's out in New York. My son's in college. We're kind of empty nesters. Thank God I've got a couple of dogs.
Yeah, right.
Now, normally, I would never say that. Now, am I being manipulative? No, I don't think I am. I think I'm actually being genuine. I wouldn't normally tell you that I have dogs, but because I know that you love dogs, I'll bring it up. Because I know the next question. Oh, what kind of dogs do you have? Well, I've got a pug and a chihuahua. Maybe you have a pug. I already know that. You might say, well, I've got a pug.
Right.
What's now happening? In sales, and it's because a lot of what we were talking about earlier, the spam we get, even if it's from a referral, even if it's from someone you know, when we sit down for coffee or over Zoom, there's a brick wall between the buyer and the seller.
Yes.
What's this person going to con me into? But we can break that down based on something in common, being genuine, being authentic. We can break that wall down, and it gives me permission to learn more about you. Because that question that every salesperson wants to know, hey, Mark, what's keeping you up at night? You're not going to tell me.
Right.
Unless we've built some rapport, we've built some trust.
Well, that wall, by the way, has been built through stereotypes of what salespeople were supposed to be 50 years ago.
Yeah, the Glengarry Glen Ross, right?
And the Simpsons.
Yeah.
You know, the Gil from the Simpsons. Most of my friends who are lawyers and CEOs and all of these folks, this is what they actually believe I do. I'm Gil from the Simpsons. They love that impression. But there's another great fellow that you'd love, Sam. You should be on his show too. His name's Philip Squire, and he runs Kinsale in the UK. And he's actually leading this charge to get sales identified as a profession at the university level in the UK. He's written a wonderful book. And at the beginning of his book, he talks about the history of sales dating, 500-600 years ago. The first written publications on professional sales were warnings from villages to villages saying, be careful of this traveling salesperson.
Wow.
Basically. The first ever written communications on sales, which I think is so funny. So that wall is really prevalent. And there was another fellow, I think his name's Dr. Morgan, who said, one of the things that happens as soon as people meet each other is subconsciously, very quickly, I'm trying to figure out your intent. And I think that wall is up because when we meet some salespeople, perhaps we're worried that their intent is to line their own pockets and could be at the expense of my best interest. And I'm trying to figure out, can I trust? We connected at the beginning of this call because you immediately, even though you're doing me the favor by being on this podcast, you took the time to do research on me and us and our business. And I realized your intent was just to have a great human connection, an authentic human connection, and have a great conversation. And suddenly that puts me completely at ease for this podcast because I know the conversation is going to be great.
Yeah.
So one of these things, just this intent, how do we show people it's about them and that we're working to earn some trust? And there's no doubt in my mind that, of course, you're running a business, but when you're interacting with your buyers who need big league speakers for large corporate events and sales kickoffs, having a conversation with you, you're worried about making sure they're going to be better off first. And by the way, in getting them there, that may end up providing a good opportunity for you.
Absolutely. And, for me, it's again, that mindset. Hey, Mark, I might not be the right fit for your upcoming conference, but I probably know somebody who is. Now, do I have a selfish motive behind that? Of course. What's my selfish motive? Mark's going to say nice things about me. Right. Maybe Mark, because guess what? If Mark's an event planner, he hangs out with other event planners. And they're going to ask, who's a cool speaker?
Right.
I had an exceptional experience. My wife and I, just the other day, we brought her wedding ring, her wedding ring, into a jewelry store in our neighborhood. We'd never been there before, even though it's 3 blocks from our house. The woman was so personable and so kind, and it was such an exceptional experience. We got back in the car. My wife said, that's the best experience I've ever had with a salesperson. What a nice person. And now what's going to happen? I guarantee you, anytime she talks to a friend, she'll bring it up. Hey, have you seen it? The new jewelry store. Now, did that salesperson at the jewelry store did they want our business? Of course they wanted our business. That's understood. But they were just genuinely nice people. Yeah. And I think, we make sales sometimes so hard. Just, I think Larry Wingett says it. Just be nice. Just be nice to people and care about what they care about. And can you help them achieve their goals a little bit faster, profitably, more efficiently than they can do on their own? Yes, good. If not, refer somebody to them. Because when you refer somebody, as my good friend Ross Bernstein says, right? Ross says, and I think using the great Canadian Wayne Gretzky, I think that Ross quotes Wayne in saying because I think Wayne not only led the league in goals, but he led the league in assists. And I think someone asked him, and Ross is going to hurt me here if I butcherize this quote. But,
I'll know the quote. Don't worry. You say the quote.
When I do an assist, when I score a goal, one person's happy. When I do an assist, two people are happy. And I think that's the same thing in sales, is I might not always get the deal, but I'm going to make sure the other person had an exceptional experience, and I'm going to hopefully provide value. Whether you believe in karma or whether you believe in just people giving referrals, it does work. Don't be the swarmy salesperson. Just be honest, be genuine, and be authentic, and be nice.
Do what's right for the other person.
Yeah.
Do what's right for them. You'll be taken care of. If this is your philosophy, this will work well. The one thing that one of the benefits of getting to my stage of life, where I've been doing this for maybe 20 plus years, even in North America, some folks are hearing this in Canada, some folks are hearing this in the US, but for all of North America, you will be shocked at how frequently you come across the same people 10, 15, 20 years later. You move up the chain, they're moving up the chain.
That's correct.
The only thing that's constant is your character.
Oh, absolutely.
And they'll remember.
Absolutely.
They'll always remember that. So I think that's just a critical thing for young salespeople getting into the profession. The other thing I think a lot of the salesy behaviors comes from the fact that new salespeople get brought on board. They're obviously filled with fearing and anxiety about being in professional sales. They know those stereotypes that we've joked about. So they feel like they've got to persuade or cajole somebody into a sale. And it's so against what we are as human beings to do that their only protection is to put up a veneer and not be authentic and just try and read off scripts and close people because that's what they think their manager wants.
Well, and Mark, we're both going to hear from, I know some of your listeners are sitting there going, hey, Mark and Sam, this is really good. Boy, it sounds really nice. But guess what? After I'm done listening to this podcast, I'm supposed to do 150 calls today. I don't have time to do your 3x5.
Right.
And you know what? You're right. You don't. Let me ask you this. Do you have time to spend 15 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the morning, finding a piece of industry research, finding something interesting that every one of those 150 people you call are going to find of value? Is it reasonable to think that on your 150 calls, you can also be nice 150 out of 150 times?
Yes.
That you can be genuine? Yeah, because you use the word character. The beautiful thing, there's also I think you use character, but there's also something called reputation.
Yes.
Now, character is a wonderful thing because you have 100% control over your character. You have 0% control over your reputation. What are you talking about? Because Mark, I have no idea what you're going to say about me after this podcast.
I'm going to say you're dynamite.
Well, hopefully, but I've got no control over that. None.
Right.
Zero. The only thing I can control is my character. And so by being genuine and authentic and trying to provide value in every one of those 150 calls, I know you can't, if you get 150 calls, I know you can't research every one. But I know you can find something of value that will be important to everyone, and you can be nice, and you can be genuine, and you can be authentic. That's your character. And if you do that consistently, that will impact your reputation. And then just like, as you said, as you move forward in your career, your reputation, what's that line? It precedes you. Your reputation is you in today's world.
Well, truer words have never been spoken, and this from one of the top professional speakers in the world, everybody.
Oh, thank you so much.
And
thank you.
Sam, people are going to want to learn a little more about you. And I know you've got some exciting new offerings on the table that help people get more interested in other folks. Tell us a little bit about how they learn more about you specifically. And please tell us a little bit more about searchlink.ai.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny. It's a neat little story. So easy to find me, as I like to say, because what I talk about, we didn't even really get into it too much today, but what I talk about is how to. How do you find information in ways that 99% of the planet has no clue how to do? So I'm pretty easily Googleable. So you can just type in Sam Richter, it's Richter, into Google, and you'll find me. Or it's samrichter.com. As it relates to some of the technologies I've built, so you referenced the book that I wrote, Take the Cold Out of Cold Calling. And then, a lot of speakers, right? And then authors said, okay, by the way, don't buy the book. It's old. It's too old. I need to write a new edition. So I'm not here to promote the book or anything. But it's an interesting path because, after you write the book and then the internet and online courses, everyone's like, oh, you need an online course. All right, I create an online course. And then I was in the shower one day where most of us get our great ideas. And I was thinking about what new video should I create for the online course? And then it hit me. Nobody wants another video. What they want is answers. They just want answers. And Google's wonderful and LinkedIn's wonderful, but we got to remember, Google is not a search engine. Google is an advertising company that uses search. LinkedIn is not a networking company, if you will. They're an advertising company that use networking and social connections to sell ads. So what I built is a number of tools that leverage Google, leverage LinkedIn, leverage about 100,000 other sources that gets you right to the information that you care about.
Great.
To your industry. And you can learn more at searchlink.ai. That's primarily for my enterprise clients. And then we have individual memberships in just about every industry you can think of. And that's called the IntelNgin. And it's spelled really weird from a marketing guy, horrible branding. Intel, IntelNgin, like a cute way of saying engine, IntelNgin.com. It's basically tools that automate a lot of what was in the book, and it helps people figure out who are the right people at the right time with the right message so you can reach out to them quickly.
Fantastic tools, team. Those will be in the show notes. So those will all be in the show notes, so easy to find. And just in the interest of your valuable time, I wanted to say, Sam, thank you for joining the podcast today. What a pleasure speaking to you.
And what an honor speaking with you. Your reputation precedes you, that's for certain. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Sam. And folks, thank you for joining today. As always, the intent of the Selling Well podcast is really to try and help improve the performance and professionalism of B2B sales today and improve the lives of salespeople. That's why we run this podcast. So if you like today's podcast, please like and subscribe to the Selling Well podcast. And by the way, if there's a way we can make this even more valuable to you, we'd really love to know. We're growth-oriented, and we love constructive criticism. So please send that criticism to me directly, Mark Cox at inthefunnel.com, MarkCox at inthefunnel.com. I check that email and love getting your tips and advice on how to improve that. In the meantime, everybody, thanks again for joining, and we'll see you the next time on The Selling Well.